Good evening, everybody. Rebecca here for yet another update video. It is Saturday night at 8:43 p.m. here in North Carolina, August 2nd. This was the date that I was originally supposed to be flying over to Sweden, and if that had worked out, then I would have been somewhere over the Atlantic right now. So sad noises there. But I do have multiple updates for you guys. We'll talk about the house first, and all of the comments that I got on my previous video, y'all are so helpful. And I mean, I even had a few Swedish people commenting on the video too, actually saying that we might be considering my whole situation incorrectly as far as how the taxes and things would affect me moving to Sweden. But y'all, I brought all of the receipts for this video. Like, I'll show you why we are being so careful. I mean, sure, there's a chance that we are interpreting this wrong, but I don't think so. And considering the potential six-figure consequences here, if we did get it wrong, and I just went ahead and moved over, hopefully by the end, you'll be able to see why we're being so careful. But after that, I will also talk about the retirement account situation and how my hope is just slightly rekindled that I might actually be able to make it on time for that high lung ritual in Sweden. I'm hoping that I might actually be able to make my flight on August 15th. So fingers crossed for that. But first, the house update. So in my last video, I talked about how there was a family that had come to see the house on my very last night that I was working. And that was Sunday night earlier this week. I'm filming this on Saturday night. And from what my mom could tell, she wasn't, at the house during the showing, but she was nearby and keeping an eye on things. And from what she could tell, it seemed like this family really enjoyed the house. Well, all week I was hoping that we would hear about a offer for the house and didn't hear anything. But finally, today, my realtor was able to get some feedback from the realtor that showed the family this house. So what happened was, this family that came, they did have pre-approval for a mortgage, which is great. However, the lady that wanted to buy the house did a thing that you're not supposed to do whenever you have pre-approval from a bank for a mortgage here in the US. I don't know if it's the same way in other places, but when you get pre-approval from a bank for a mortgage here in the US, you are not supposed to do any large financial transactions of any type, whether it is making a large purchase, paying off a large amount of debt, having somebody gift you some money. You're not supposed to do anything major until you've got your house bought. So the lady that wants to buy my house made an oopsie, and apparently she made a large purchase. That's the feedback that we got from the realtor that showed her this house. So they are currently working through that with her bank, and fingers crossed that they'll be able to sort out whatever that was, and maybe next week I'll hear something about an offer. I mean, if that's all that the holdup is, I'm hoping they'll be able to get that straightened out. Also, the buyer's agent, the realtor that showed the lady this house, just straight up told my realtor that she loved the house and she wants it. So I mean, considering that it's been a week since she's seen the house, she could have just said, yeah, she liked the house, but there's other homes for sale in the area. That is the truth. There are plenty of options here where I live. And, she could have just said, oh, she's checking out other properties or whatever, and not let on that her client really wanted my house, but she did. So you know, I feel like that's a good sign. So as long as they're able to get whatever this purchase was straightened out with her bank and it didn't ruin her pre-approval somehow, then maybe, fingers crossed, I'll get an offer in the next few days. So that is the good news about the house. Now let's talk about the tax situation with me moving. Yay! So everybody loves talking about taxes, right? I had to take several screenshots of everything that I needed to include and show you guys in this video. So this is what I mean by I was showing up with the receipts for you guys. So the most liked comment that I got on my last video, I pinned to the top of the video actually, and it had 17 likes at the time that I'm filming this anyway. And it says, from Charity, I mean, why can't you go visit Sweden now and officially move later in a few months? You still own a home here in North Carolina. You aren't working, so you don't have hardline travel dates outside of the visa situation you've spoken about. So I get it. And she wasn't the only one that mentioned doing this or something like this along those lines. Just visit Sweden for now and come back to the US and then start my retirement account rollovers and potentially hang around until the house sells and then move to Sweden later. If I did that option, you know, that might be possible, but it's kind of cutting it a little bit close, I feel like, because here's the thing. If I did that option and I came back home basically just to get the house sold, wait for my retirement accounts to transfer over, I would be flying back over to Sweden permanently, say like in a month, 6 weeks. You know, that's assuming that there is an offer on the table for my house. So I think that is cutting it too close. Because again, throughout all of this, you guys, you have to keep in mind the cost of being wrong here about this financial situation of me moving over there is potentially over 6 figures in taxes that I would have to pay, and I can't afford that. So that is the big thing hanging over my head as far as what if I am wrong about when taxes will hit for me becoming a resident of Sweden. So I asked Skatteverket about this months ago, this exact situation. Now, Skatteverket is the Swedish tax agency for anybody who doesn't know, all of my American viewers. So I emailed them months ago when I was moving my pets over, because at the time we were concerned, hey, would me moving my pets over to Sweden be enough to kind of trigger Sweden to think that I am now a resident of Sweden? Because at this point, I did have my residence permit approved. And here's the email that I sent them. And this was back on March 16th. So again, months ago, I said, hi, I recently had my residence permit approved and I'm looking at moving to Sweden soon. Soon didn't end up happening, did it? Anyway, I'm wanting to visit Sweden to move my pets over before myself so that it'll make it easier for me to finish tying up loose ends here in the USA before I move over permanently. I wanted to ask, when will I be considered a tax resident of Sweden? Is it the date I move over or the date I fly with my pets to Sweden? Seems like a straightforward question, right? Well, here's the answer that I got straight from the horse's mouth from Skatteverket. And you'll notice they replied back to me like 2 weeks later, April 2nd. This person said, hi, the short answer is that you will become a resident in Sweden by the day you move here. But it all depends on the situation. For example, how long your visits are, if you rent or buy a place to live here, etc. So in reality, there are more things that we have to take into consideration. But in general, you become a resident when you are moving to Sweden. Now, y'all can see how that answer isn't exactly what I was asking. I wasn't asking about becoming a resident of Sweden. I'm asking about when do I become a tax resident of Sweden. But for the time being, we just let that be. I went ahead and moved my pets over, as y'all know. And then, once I came back home, got everything going with the home sale. I was distracted with that for a while, still am really. But we did some more research on the topic ourselves, because getting answers from Skatteverket, yes, they do get back with you, but it does take some time. So we kind of just started researching things ourselves. And so from the Skatteverket website itself, here is another thing that we found that seemed very applicable to me and my situation. So on this page, liability for taxation. Persons who are domiciled in, stay regularly in, or have significant connections to Sweden are subject to unlimited taxation in Sweden. This means that you are liable for tax in Sweden for all forms of income, regardless of whether they originate from Sweden or another country. And then they have the 3 bullet points listed below here. You are considered to be domiciled in Sweden if your actual place of residence is in Sweden. In such cases, you must be listed in the Swedish population register. So, already here we can see that the opening paragraph applies very much to me, because I do have significant connections to Sweden. My husband is Swedish. We were married in Sweden. I think the whole reason that I am not going to be liable for taxes in Sweden until I move there is because I do not yet have a Swedish identity. I have no personnummer. I have not even a samordningsnummer. All of that stuff we're going to do when I actually move over. But the second bullet point they had there, you count as staying regularly in Sweden if you were in Sweden for 6 consecutive months or more. This is the 180-day rule that some of you were talking about in your comments as well. Short-term departures, such as a visit to your native country, do not shorten the duration of your stay in Sweden. So this is the part that made me hesitate about coming over there just for the Heilung show, and then coming back home, and then flying back over there to stay permanently so quickly. And then the last bullet point really relates more to people who already have a Swedish identity. I think it says you can be considered to have significant connections to Sweden if, after moving from Sweden, you still have a residence or family or important assets or similar in Sweden. So since I don't have a Swedish identity yet, I don't feel like that bullet point pertains to me, but I feel like with the rest of this page, it applies enough to me that they could say that I owe taxes on this retirement account rollover that I'm doing if I was in Sweden as a resident when those funds hit my own brokerage account. And that's why many of you were suggesting to, just fly over for Heilung, come back home, and then start the retirement account rollover when I came back home. But would that still be considered too close to my actual move date if I'm not here long enough before I go back to Sweden? Who really knows? I feel like there's a little bit of a gray area there where they could say that maybe I do owe taxes on that amount of money. And again, 6-figure amount of taxes. Is it worth the risk? No, I can't afford that. But I did get comments along those lines. I got a comment from Drew Conway. What if you wait to make the rollover? In other words, book a return ticket to the US, go enjoy the concert and a few days with your husband. Don't initiate the IRA rollover until after you're back. Assuming your house is not sold by that point, you have plausible deniability with the tax authority in Sweden that you waited to relocate until after you closed on your house. If your house still isn't in escrow by September or whenever, then you can say you decided to pull the trigger anyway because you didn't want to wait for winter and the US housing market is moving slower than you expected. Something along those lines. Very reasonable theory here. Or perhaps it's worth having a consult with a tax attorney in Sweden, paying a few hundred SEK for an hour to ask how you can do this may be worth it. True, at that point. But really, I'm so close to moving over permanently anyway. Meh. But maybe you're right. Sure, I could consult some tax person in Sweden about this situation just to be sure. Though I imagine this is a difficult time of year to get an appointment with a professional in Sweden as everyone is on summer holidays. Facts. It is hard to get anything done in the summer during Sweden. Not that I can blame these Swedes because the weather is perfect, and I think it's wonderful, honestly, that they choose to prioritize that during the summertime. And someone else replied to this comment along the same things. My Bell-ish, I hope you'll take a step back and revisit your decision to postpone your trip. You can go spend 3 weeks in Sweden and come back to finalize the sale of your home and your pension transfers and then move. You're a resident in the US as long as your home remains in your name. Go, relax, and enjoy. I hear y'all, trust me, and I want to. I really do. But it's the risk of being wrong is what I cannot afford to take here. And like I said, I did have some Swedes also commenting on this video saying that we're not considering things correctly because I've spent the majority of my time in 2025 here in the US and not in Sweden. So I will not be considered a tax resident for Sweden until 2026. Maybe that is correct, but since we could not get a straight answer from Skatteverket themselves, and the Skatteverket website makes it sound like they could come after me for taxes as soon as I move there, we just couldn't take that risk. I got a comment from Jamie30, and to me it sounds like you are a Swede. But he said, okay, so many people are saying so many things here. I hope I will not confuse you. Your video came out 13 days ago. The I did it video, that means you have already lived more than half the year not in Sweden, so there is no need for you to become a Swedish tax resident whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that you can still change back to a US tax resident. A couple of weeks of tax residency in Sweden will not change anything. I would go back to our Swedish tax residents only after I would sort out the 401k situation. But of course, it's your life and you know better. P.S. Visiting Sweden even for as much as 90 days is no problem at all, even for the remainder of 2025, as long as you don't register as a tax resident here. So you might be right, but all of the things that we found from Skatteverket and the answer that I got from Skatteverket themselves was saying something different. So that's just, we could not take that risk. The final thing that sort of put all of this together for me was a ruling that we found about someone who was very much in my similar situation, who was doing a retirement account rollover and how Sweden taxed that rollover. So this is a ruling that happened back in 2019, so fairly recently. Apparently this situation is now happening often enough that Sweden actually had to make a court ruling on how taxes are handled in this type of situation. So from the Deloitte website themselves, there's an article dated 27 March 2019. Court rules on taxation of funds transferred to foreign retirement accounts. On March 27, 2019, Sweden's Supreme Administrative Court ruled that funds that are transferred from a 401k plan to an individual retirement account, an IRA, in the US are considered as taxable pension income in Sweden, and the taxable event occurs at the time of transfer to the IRA. The case concerns a 67-year-old Swedish tax resident. That is the one thing where I am not clear that it would apply in my situation, because we're a little uncertain about exactly when I'm considered a tax resident of Sweden. Skatteverket says it's the day that I move over, but other places seem to suggest that I have to spend the majority of my time in Sweden this year to be considered a tax resident of Sweden. But again, am I going to take that risk? No. Continuing on. The case concerns a 67-year-old Swedish tax resident who made a rollover from a 401k plan to an IRA, and later that year also made 2 withdrawals from the IRA. The question was when the taxable event occurs. The court established in the judgment that the taxable event occurs when the rollover from the 401k to the IRA takes place. The court concludes that the tax treatment and tax triggering event in the U.S. are not relevant for the Swedish tax analysis, and that the taxable event should be determined in Sweden regardless of the tax treatment in the U.S. And this is what I was finding reading about Roth IRAs as well. Basically, Sweden doesn't really consider an IRA and a Roth IRA. They don't consider those the same tax treatment the way they are here in the US. So for me, the reason why I stopped contributing to a Roth IRA is that I am basically losing the tax benefit of the Roth part of the IRA, because Sweden is going to tax that income on any withdrawals I take from that account later, regardless of whether the US does or not, because they just do not consider it the same tax treatment. And yes, there are tax treaties in place between both countries, but double taxation can still occur in some places. Continuing on in that article, further, the court concludes that the funds in the 401k are managed by a trust that is linked to the employer, and that the individual therefore cannot be deemed to have sufficient access or control over the funds at that time. Hence, the taxable event cannot occur at the time of contributions to the 401k plan. That makes sense. Instead, the court concluded that the taxable event occurs at the time of the rollover from the 401k to the IRA, considering that the IRA is in the name of the individual and that the individual can access the funds in the IRA without limitations. So there you go. The entire value of the transferred funds from the 401k is deemed as pension income in Sweden. The tax treaty between the US and Sweden does not limit Sweden's taxation right over the pension income for an individual who is a Swedish tax treaty resident at the time of the rollover. Y'all can see why I have to be so cautious about this. I can't risk Sweden calling me a tax resident the first day I move over there. And maybe I won't be, but since the person at Skatteverket said I'm a resident the day that I move over there, I can't risk it. Continuing on with that article, the court found that the taxable event occurs at the time of the transfer when the funds are transferred from the 401k plan to an IRA. This means that if the individual is a Swedish tax treaty resident at the time of the rollover, Sweden has the right to tax the entire value subject to the rollover as pension income. The ruling should be a clarification of existing legislation and may therefore be applied retroactively. A little bit scary there, but yeah, this is why it's a good thing that I waited to move until this is done. The court ruling was broad, meaning that it may be applied in similar cases even when the specific facts deviate from this case. Because the Swedish tax analysis is applied without considering the tax treatment in the U.S., the transferred funds may be fully taxable in the U.S. at the point of withdrawal from the IRA, without the U.S. allowing a foreign tax credit for the Swedish taxes paid at the time of the rollover. This means a double tax situation may occur. Individuals will need to consider the possible application of the ruling when planning moves to Sweden and before transferring any funds to an IRA while being considered a Swedish tax treaty resident. That was the whole of the article, and that article is pretty damning. I mean, while I found Skatteverket to be a little bit of a gray area, that specific article from Deloitte about this ruling, sure, the whole hang-up there was the fact that this person was already a Swedish tax resident at the time of his rollover, and that is why I just wanted to make sure that I do this rollover before I am definitely considered a Swedish tax resident. I have no Swedish identity yet, no person number, no samordningsnummer, but that's why I have to wait until this is done before I move over. My husband looked up earlier today the tax bracket for income, because pension income is taxed as regular income, like the article said. And since I am rolling over multiple six figures, this is where the 40% figure came from. And honestly, it might actually be more than 40% that I would be taxed. But here is the Swedish tax bracket income. Sorry, it is in Swedish for my English speaking people here, but you can see on the left side are the amounts in Swedish krona, and the right side is obviously the percentage tax bracket. So it is roughly 10 Swedish crowns to $1. So you can see the highest tax bracket. I know very little Swedish at this point, but I know hög is high and år is year. So assuming that this range is in the thousands, yeah, I would be in the higher tax bracket here for that amount of money that I'm rolling over. So if they're going to tax that as income, I can't do it. I cannot afford that. And the reason that we believe that pension income is taxed as regular income for me in Sweden is another thing that we found on the Skatteverket website. So I'll put it on the screen here, but this little box down here that says the amount of income tax levied on your pension. In Sweden, pension income is taxed as earned income. There are 3 different levels of taxation, and the amount of tax for which you are liable depends on the amount of your income. Well, we've already established that doing this rollover is multiple 6 figures, and that's considered a lot of income in Sweden. So it would be a high tax rate. So yeah, that's where we are with that whole situation and why I am being so super cautious about this. I hope y'all can understand now. I have been accused many times in my life of being way too type A. I like to plan. I'm very cautious. I like for things to be in my control. I like to do everything that I possibly can to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and everything is the way that it's supposed to be. And even still, when you're being careful, things don't always play out properly or like you think they will, and some things are just gonna be out of your control regardless. So despite me agonizing over all of this, I still have to err on the side of caution. It's possible that I could just move over and go to that Highland concert and not even come back at all, and I still would not be considered tax resident for Sweden this year. Maybe the 6 months thing would apply and all of this would be fine for me to do while I'm living in Sweden, but considering everything that I have shown you guys in this video, we just cannot risk that being wrong. So the safest thing to do is to wait. But if you are still with me in this video, this is where I have the best news possible, I think. Even better, potentially, than maybe getting an offer on the house next week. Regarding all of the retirement account transfers that I have to do, I have one from Job A and one from Job B. Job A was the big one. Job B is low 5 figures. Not super concerned about that one. However, with Job A, my last paycheck from them was July 31st. I was pretty sure that once they paid out my remaining vacation hours to me, that comes in a paper check. And I thought that those vacation hours were going to have retirement contributions. But it seems not. So earlier this week on Monday, I contacted the place that has my 403B from Job A. It's essentially the same thing as a 401k. Don't get too hung up over that. Anyway, they're a 403B. I called them to ask. Now, they didn't know about the PTO situation, but I asked about doing the rollover and how soon I could start that. And they said that basically, once my employer marks me as no longer an active employee, I will be able to see that on their website and begin the rollover as soon as they have me delisted as an active employee. So I have been obsessively checking that website all week this week. I mean, the earliest that I thought that would happen would be on my last paycheck day, which is July 31st, but really I thought it would be the next day, August 1st, just judging by when my previous employer contributions have hit that account. So yesterday was August 1st and nothing had changed. So I was a little disheartened, thinking like, oh man, maybe I am going to have to wait for that PTO check to come to me and have a retirement account contribution from that. And if that was going to be the case, it was going to be the next pay period, which would guarantee that I was going to miss that High Lung concert. So late last night on Friday night, though, the website changed. It still had me listed as an active employee, but previously at the bottom, when I went to do a withdrawal request from this retirement account, I had 3 options. I could either do an in-service withdrawal, a loan against the account, or a hardship withdrawal. Those were my only 3 options. But last night, the account changed and it said, based on the information above, which still had me listed as an active employee, so I don't know what they were looking at. Anyhow, it said, based on the information above, you have no withdrawal options for this account. And I was like, well, why did that change? Something must be happening here. So sure enough, I looked today and I had the option to do a rollover and I was no longer listed as an active employee with job A. So I went ahead and got that rollover started today. So, and I was very happy, to see that I could do that all online. I didn't have to like send in any forms or anything, wait on the mail, you know. I was able to do the whole thing online. So the rollover process is started. Now they are going to mail a paper check to my brokerage. And since today is Saturday, August 2nd, I expect that check is not going to be mailed out until Monday. But in the confirmation email that I got from this company, it said that my check should be received within 2 to 5 business days from my rollover being accepted, which my rollover was accepted today. So if that is true, y'all, then there is a very good chance that my brokerage will receive that check next week. And I have another full week after that before my flight. So fingers crossed that retirement account is actually going to make it in time for me to actually go to Sweden on the 15th and I will not miss High Lung after all. I'm so excited for that. I really, really hope that is the case and there are no hiccups with this for whatever reason. I did also actually try to start the rollover from job B as well, but for some reason it would not take my account number for my brokerage when I tried to do it online. So I'm going to try to call Monday to fix that. Editing Rebecca here with an update on the job B 401k. So after I filmed this video, I actually had the brilliant idea to contact my brokerage, which is available 24/7, and ask them about this issue I was having with my 401k. And very long story short, we got the account number thing figured out. They knew exactly what my 401k company was looking for. So that is settled. And now my 401k from job B is also in the process of being rolled over to my own brokerage. And job B is the one that had the expedited option. So I expect now that hopefully both of my retirement accounts will be rolled over and into my own brokerage, hopefully by the end of next week. Fingers crossed that I can get both of my retirement accounts rolled over before I actually go to Sweden. And you know, if all the stars just align for me, maybe I will also get an offer on the house next week. So, will an offer on the house change my plans any? Answer there is no. I will still fly over to Sweden. I will sign all of the paperwork for the home sale remotely. I have done the math all week this week. Now that I have been, you know, retired early and I'm off work, I dug through every single paper receipt that I have, every single online receipt that I have for like all the hardware in this house. Examples, doorknobs, the vanities for both bathrooms, light fixtures, everything that I could find, ceiling fans, appliances, everything that is staying in this house. I found all of the receipts from the contractor work for the labor for the house, all of the materials for the outside of the house, because this house got brand new siding, a new roof, new gutters, new soffit underneath all the way around, faux stone under the foundation of the house. Y'all, I got a lot of receipts. Again, type A personality working out for me in this case, because by the time I tallied up all of those receipts for the work that I had done on this house to do the renovations, if this lady were to make me an offer on the house that I am asking, meaning she offers me $284,900 for the house, I'm not going to have very much capital gains to claim at all for the sale of the house. And just to be clear, I know I'm not going to have capital gains here in the US. I'm talking about Sweden here, if I make the home sale while I'm a resident in Sweden. And again, maybe the whole tax resident thing will not apply to me for 2025. But since we just could not be sure about that, I wanted to make sure I'm not making a big mistake here by moving to Sweden first, you know, and doing the home sale remotely, residing in Sweden. But even if I do the house sale while I'm living in Sweden and somehow Sweden says that, okay, you are a tax resident of Sweden while this home sale happened, I still do not have a lot of capital gains at all to claim for this place, even if this lady makes me an offer at the price I'm asking. So if I do get an offer next week from her and it's a good offer that I'm willing to accept, then I'm still going to go to Sweden on August 15th. And I mean, that would just be the best situation of all, right? If I could get the house sold soon after I move over, because then I wouldn't have to worry about paying for my mortgage and utilities and everything while I'm living in Sweden, but paying for everything here for the house in North Carolina. It would be great if I could get it sold soon after moving over, because that will save me the costs of having to keep up this house. So maybe, just maybe, things are starting to look up for me here, and hopefully this lady can get her issues with the bank sorted out and I can get an offer on the table for the house here pretty soon. But yeah, that is all of the updated tea for everything that I've got going on right now. Everything else is going well. I've done all the things that I needed to do to make sure that I'm ready to go to Sweden. I have closed what bank accounts I needed to close. What credit cards I needed to close have been closed. I had my spa day, which I'm a little embarrassed to talk about the cost of that, but I'm gonna have to when I get around to doing the budget review video, so stay tuned for that. But Lord, I spent some money at the spa. But that's okay. You know what? I spent the last 13 months working 2 full-time third shift jobs, 72 hours a week. So I deserve it. And honestly, I feel like it was worth every penny. I left that place feeling so relaxed, like my vibe was on a whole nother level, you guys. So yeah, all of that stuff is done. The only thing that I seem to not be able to do is get on a normal sleep schedule and day shift. I have been trying, y'all, but my body just wants to be awake at night and asleep during the day. Even when I have stuff to do during the day and I'm awake all day, I still wake up in the middle of the night and then I can't go back to sleep. And then I get sleepy when the sun actually does come up and end up sleeping all day again. So that is apparently going to take some time to correct, but it's okay. I have all the time in the world now, right? Joys of being retired early. All right, that should cover it for this video. This is going to take forever to edit because I have to put in all these screenshots. I hope you guys have enjoyed the update here, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye, y'all.
I just heard from trusted sources that you aren't bad boy. No, you're a good boy. Yeah, and you would never, no, you would never do anything. You're a good boy. Mostly good boy. Yeah, most of the time. Hey!